Hi, Mike. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the
Hi, Bob.
SquadCast. We are live. Thank you for being here tonight. We have a little bit of a special show. We are. It's going to be just you and I tonight, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to remember some people. We're going to talk about some new things. We're going to see what's coming out. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to talk about people in front of their backs.
Yes, which
So,
I love doing that. We're gonna. Sherry's here watching with us. Thanks for being
Hi,
there.
Sherry.
We are going to start off, I think, tonight. I just changed my mind. We're gonna talk about the books that are coming out this week. There's an interesting array of books. Some of them are good. Some of them we are very interested in. One of them I've been waiting for a long time. So let me bring that in. These are the new number ones for this week.
One of those buttons.
Yeah, I got it. Here we go.
Whoa.
Okay. So this is a Fantagraphics book that is a collection of some stuff that Katie Skelly had done earlier in her career, and it's being represented in this format, which I'm very excited about. I think it looks really good. She's a creator artist, writer artist, and I think this looks interesting. There's a new Boom book which I'm gonna read tonight by Zach Thompson, who I like a lot. Zach Thompson is a tremendous writer, and this one is the kind of isolation horror scariness that works really well with him. This one, have you read this yet?
Nope.
So this is the Scott Snyder Jamal Igle book that was part of that Scott Snyder Comixology run from a couple of years ago, and they've been slowly rolling them out to print. And if this one comes out in issue format in print this week for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read, I think, the first issue previously, but I'm looking forward to this coming out in print for people.
Well, I'm a fan of both of those folks. Scott's got a lot going on right now.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
We're going to get there. It's on the list. I am loving the fact that Greg Weisman is writing comics lately, and if he's writing Gargoyles, then you should read it. You know, he's good, and this is his baby. So,
yeah, that's really true, and I'm so happy for just to see his success, his enduring, ongoing success. He's done a lot of great stuff in animation.
Yep.
And I've said this before, but he got his start, being the photocopy guy over at DC, and photocopy machine that he used, his favorite, was just down the corridor from my office. So we got to know each other pretty well, possibly because I treated him like as if he was a genuine professional.
Oh,
because that's what he was in training.
Sure.
And boy, did that pay off. Good for him.
I agree. There is a giant size Hulk coming out this week, which is a one shot. And the interesting thing about this, and I say interesting loosely, there is a new Philip Kennedy Johnson Hulk story in this book. Which is good, and the way that Philip writes Hulk, or if you haven't been reading it, first of all, go back and watch our episode with Philip from a couple weeks ago. Second of all, each of those work well standalone-ish. So I think that's good. There's also a reprint of a Peter David Hulk in this to make it 48 pages. So.
Why, though, are they making a big deal about the 50th anniversary of a format that not only didn't create, but had been around since pretty much the dawn of comics.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's only 2 giant size Marvel books that are notable. There's the giant size Avengers that is notable, and the giant size X-Men, of course. That book on its own has importance.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's coming up on 50th and 50 years next year, that book.
When is Giant Size Man Thing? That's the third most notable.
That is true.
Just because of the name,
of course,
and also Howard.
Right. Well, the Giant Size Man thing is something we all wish for, right? So. Oh, Mindy's joined us. Hi, Mindy.
Hey, Mindy.
We're going to talk about you a little bit.
Oh, good. Wow. I got stuff to say about her.
So, yeah, that's coming this week. Then this one looks interesting. This is from Top Shelf, which is I struggle with understanding what they're about. Like, so Top Shelf is an imprint that IDW prints.
IDW bought the imprint.
Okay, is that how that works?
Yeah, that's how it worked. And I think that they still run themselves fairly independently. But with all the changes at IDW the last couple of years, I can't swear to that.
Well, you don't see anything IDW related on the Top Cow website.
Top Shelf.
Top Shelf.
Right.
I get them confused, and I apologize for that.
Top shelves, cows, upside down. They all look alike.
I know. That's true. Anyway, this book looks really, really pretty good. I've seen some interest inside stuff of it, and it looks good. I'm interested in it. It's a graphic novel.
What's it about?
It is. It's about some mob people doing some stuff that they shouldn't do, and some people trying to run away from that. There's another mob-related book that's coming, which is this one, which is a Mad Cave, regular single-issue series that's starting, a mini-series at least. The robot falls in love. The robot is a taxi driver. And the taxi driver falls in love with a woman. And so there's the romance related to that. And yeah, I don't know. It looks good. It's got some interesting art. It's got some interesting stuff to it.
It's hard to do a good story about autoeroticism.
It's not. We're all with the puns tonight. This is what I've been waiting for.
Oh, yeah, it's a digest book.
It is not. We're not stopping. It's a big book about a bunch of small things.
Yeah.
So it is 770 something pages. It's Micronauts 1 to 30 plus 2 annuals. But I'm a huge Micronauts fan. I'm a huge Bill Mantlo fan, and this book, I think it got announced like sometime last year, and it had been. Because it hasn't been reprinted, it hasn't been collected. Not the like it, and I'm glad that people want it and will have it, and that's great. And it's a great, Dave Carpenter cover. But you can get all 30 issues for about a third of the price of this book.
But you won't exercise carrying the 30 issues.
Right.
This, if you carry it around with you, you'll work up some muscles.
I understand that. It's hard, slipcase, hard covered, 770 something page book. So that's coming out tomorrow. If you want to get it, you can get it. It's $100.
That's not bad.
And then I think this is the last one. Now this one, this is a one shot. It's a regular size, not a super not a ultra sized, but this is apparently something that's going on in Thor. If you're reading Thor, it kind of ties into that. There's some Chad AI guy who's the Chad Hammer, right? Is Hulk is or Thor is being Chad Hammer, and it's kind of some AI company leader, and it's about apparently this is very tongue in cheek, very making fun of what's going on in the world and all these conversations we're having about AI and image and not with a small I image and the comments that I saw online were pretty funny because the idea that this AI like person being drawn by Greg Land was not lost on people. and then there's this new book from Kevin Scott, who I always recommend, and Rachel Stott is a fantastic artist. If you're into Star Wars High Republic, this book comes out this week. So, folks.
So you skip over DC because
there aren't any new DCs
this week today.
There are no new number ones.
You're right. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry, I can't count.
There are plenty of good new DC books coming out this week.
I read one of them.
Did you read Nightwing?
Nope.
That one.
That's number 2. That's the next one I'll read.
I read
Wonder Woman.
What did you read? Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. Yeah,
it's damn good. A must read.
Well, it most certainly is. I mean, it's Tom King is a terrific writer, and he does not disappoint. But this is just stellar work, and this issue is really gutsy.
And I thought I anticipated it being that way based on the last issue, which was hilarious.
It was brilliant. Also standalone. It worked.
Yes, but it's some of his best humor that he's written is in that previous issue. The which, if you haven't read, it's a great story. Standalone. Wonder Woman and Superman go shopping for Batman's birthday, and it is as ridiculous as you can imagine it to be. There are some really terrible dad jokes in it that make you laugh because they are so terrible.
Great character development.
Yeah.
Though.
Yes.
Really great character development. Despite the humor, no. The humor helps bring that out.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, I mean, if I were just at that one big comic book rack, and I've been there a few times in my life, just the whole big ass wall of comics, and I can only buy one comic, it would be Wonder Woman. Easily.
It is the best book consistently that DC and or Marvel is putting out. It is very good. It's a long form storytelling. Each issue is completely self-contained within that long form, which makes it easily accessible. But the long story that he's telling is really captivating.
Yeah. This is the have your cake and eat it too series.
Yep.
And some of the elaboration of the storyline comes in the backup feature.
Yep.
And has since issue 1.
Yeah, he started writing the backups, I think, in issue 3 because the other ones. And,
but they were set up.
Oh yeah,
it was just part of the deal. And I admire that. I mean, every once in a while, it's like you pick up a book, and the first feeling that you get is that same feeling you got when you were, 12, and you picked up a really cool comic book.
Mm-hmm. It's rarer and rarer these days for all of us.
Well, because I'm older and older, I'm just
sure
cynical, and I've read it all, and I've reread it all, for crying out loud. I'm in the middle of 2 different Fantagraphics books, almost 3 right now. reprinting stuff that mostly I've read before, but haven't read in a long time and enjoying the hell out of it. I am reading the, I think, latest collection of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers and Fat Freddy's Cat.
I'm glad you're reading that.
Well, it will actually sort of segue into one of our topics of conversation today.
I think
I'm sorry?
I think we're gonna get to that pretty soon. So
yeah. The opportunity to read something new that is actually new, not just retread old stuff, which you get a lot of, particularly in the superhero books. That's nice. That's an exciting opportunity. We have a bunch of that out there, but because the superhero field is essentially landlocked, there's the DC crowd, and that's just huge, and the Marvel crowd, and that's huger, and then nobody else really exists. Those are our superheroes. So there's a lot for them to imitate. When there's something really brilliant and brand new and it just comes out just like gangbusters, still happens. Wonder Woman is your go-to book right now.
I will agree. I will agree. All right. Let's touch on the other, since we're talking about superheroes, we're talking about DC. One of the other topics I want to talk about, and we mentioned briefly, was Scott Snyder has a lot going on right now, and it was announced yesterday and confirmed today with the press release. I think that he is doing something called Absolute Comics, which is being framed in a way that it is DC's answer to the Ultimate Universe, where they're going to, under Scott's, direction, I guess, reinvent in some ways the DC characters in an alternate universe that is going to be connected to each other. So there's going to be a bunch of titles the way that the Ultimate Universe was, so that they're within it, but they are not. I think there's going to be some level of understanding bleed through from the beginning, setting up, I guess, at some point, possibly some crossovers between the universes.
Awesome. Stunning. Shocking. I got to ask a question here. I am second to no one in my admiration of Scott's work, and I've told him that. I mean, he's a damn good writer, so none of this has anything to do with Scott. But an absolute universe sounds like, yeah, everybody's crocked on vodka. But why? We have Earth 1 through a billion, and I mean,
so I will give you an answer to this that I don't know is accurate, but it's something that Rich Johnston said, and I don't know that it's true. I don't know if this is accurate, but one of the things he said is, it was only about 10 years before the copyrights or the public domain copyrights for the characters start to become public domain.
But they've been dealing with that, particularly at DC, for a long, long time. They keep on introducing more and more characters and alternate versions, more and more characters, just because those characters will not fall into public domain.
Sure.
Now, Superman will in a few years, and then Batman and all the others. I mean, Human Torch too. I mean, Submariner. That doesn't mean that anybody can go and do Superman stories, and it certainly doesn't mean they can call them Superman. They can't. That's a trademark issue. That's a totally different thing. If you want to use the material from any of the public domain issues, you're okay doing that. But you can't use anything else. If you do a Superman story because Superman action number 1 is in public domain, and you have Perry White in the story, you're screwed. Perry White wasn't introduced for another couple of years.
Right.
George Taylor was around, and in the newspaper strip, it's kind of interesting to see visually how George Taylor evolved into Perry White right around the time the radio show started, which I think is kind of funny. But, it's not that big an issue. I think Disney is still in business. We're all raising money for gloves for Mickey. Okay, I got it. We're fine. But
yeah. So I don't know.
I'm sorry, but if you're going to have a choir, have Ed in it.
Yes, that's true. So yeah, so Scott is doing this Ultimate Comics thing. It's going to have so Mark Waid is going to do something called Absolute Power starting very soon, like within the next month. And when that's over, I think there's something else. The interesting thing about this, my understanding from what I may have heard, is that the Absolute Comics thing, well, I thought it was weird that it got announced today, because it seems like, from my understanding of timing, it's not going to happen till 2025. But we'll see.
It's not that long.
Yeah, but there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. So
sure, well, including a lot of people who won't have the same job.
Unfortunately, that's never ending.
It's never ending. Well, that's gravity.
Sure. Let's take a minute and do what we wanted to do, what the title of this 37th episode of the Pop Culture Squadcast Live is, and have a little bit of a tribute to Trina. You texted me last Wednesday, and for once, probably one of the very few times, you said, "Sigh, Trina Robbins died. Hope Steve's hanging in there." And I was devastated, as you were. Just a terrible loss. I had the opportunity, and we'll show you a bit of that later, to talk to Trina last year. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about her life. I want to share with folks who don't know what she's up to, or what she was up to, what Trina is about. So, to Trina.
First of all, my condolences to Steve Lealoha.
Yes.
Who I haven't known quite as long as Trina. I met Trina in like 71. Steve maybe in 76. Great guy, a great couple, And those of us who have lost our spouses at one time or another, I don't think they were formally married.
They were not,
Um,
but they've been together since '77.
right, which beats everybody else. So
Sure.
screw that, right? Um, it's a loss you never really recover from, and you've heard people say that, and you may have felt that yourself out there in Etherland. So Steve, my heart goes out to you, my friend. My heart goes out to you. You've had a hell of a great life with her. So, look at that. Look at
that. Trina Robbins was a true original, and in ways that define the word original. She was someone who did not take no for an answer when someone said she couldn't do something. And when she found a platform or a microphone or a soapbox, she used it to help everybody around her to bring equality wherever she could. She was a fighter, fierce fighter for women's rights. She was a fierce fighter for creator rights. She was defiant till the end. I was looking at in that video that I just posted. There's a shot of, there's two shots of Mindy. One is her and Mindy, which is great, and then there's one screenshot from when I interviewed them last year. And I was listening to that, and if I misspoke about how she was a something on something that she had absolute control over, she let me know. And I, she's like, I didn't anything. That was all me. I did it. And
that's right.
And
she spent her entire life documenting in fine detail the careers of women cartoonists, many of whom, perhaps most of whom, we weren't all that aware of. So, God damn it, she better do it for herself too, and that's just what she did.
and you're right. No, I'll go over this a couple of things. One of Mike's column from this week, your tribute to Trina was looking at one of her latest works,
right?
Which was,
I couldn't do another obit.
I understand that. It's Dauntless Dames, high-heeled heroes of the comic strips, that she just came out recently, within the last 8 months or so. There's another book of hers that just came out, says We Won't Stop, about that she edited, that is a collection and anthology in defense of women's right to choose, which is something that was very important to her.
And is still important to us all,
of course,
one way or the other.
Absolutely. I want to tell the story really quick of how I had the opportunity to interview her. Obviously, I've known who she is for a long time. As I got more involved in in comics, the admiration that her colleagues and contemporaries and admirers had, is infectious. She was universally revered in today's world. Anyway, last year in March, I was doing a series of live shows with women-only creators and trying to celebrate Women's History Month. And I had this wacky idea to see if I could get, because I had one extra slot, and I said, let me see what if I got Trina Robbins. And the reason I even said that was because a piece had just come out about her in the San Francisco Gate, about how she's like, I'm 84 and I'm gonna stay at my desk until I pass away, and I got 16 more years because I'm gonna keep going until I'm 100. Right.
There you go.
That was the thing. And I'm like, you know what? Let's talk. And I had this crazy idea, and I sent her a Facebook messenger, and she answered and said, yeah, because I had this really wacky idea that I bet I could get Mindy to come on too. And I passed it by you, and you thought it was a good idea, and you reached out to Mindy, and they both wanted to do it together. And it's one of the highlights of my career in this business, is to have that opportunity to talk to both of them about their experiences as women creators in this field, about their experience with Wonder Woman, who we've spent a lot of time talking about tonight already. And it was great. And I'm going to share something with you. I don't know that you've actually ever seen this. I've told you the story, but this is, I set up a clip. This is just a small snippet of Trina, because we do have her on Pop Culture Squad. We did have her here. And I want to give everybody the opportunity to see what she was like. Hang on one second. I'm going to put this in here. Okay, I think it's this one.
You need fewer buttons.
Okay. All right, I got it. It moved off on me, and I apologize for this. A little bit of technical difficulties, but I got it. Here we go. Bob.
Okay.
I thought that's where you were going, but okay, ahead.
When I was researching the book I did on superheroines, I phoned him to ask him about Wonder Woman, and he said, "You want to know the truth about Wonder Woman?" I said, "Yes, please." He said, "Lesbians. They're all lesbians." And I said, "Really?" So that was my experience, and that's what he told me.
I don't think he meant that.
And he did it just as angrily and powerfully.
Is that the only conversation you've ever had with Bob Koeniger?
Yes.
That's enough. That's enough of a conversation. Bob Koeniger told me that story as well. Not about Trina, but about going up to the Marsden house farm with his wife and his mistress, who were also working on Wonder Woman, and the three of them were living happily together. And Bob, who's an evil, terrible human being, just couldn't deal with it. He says, "Look, people, they're writing about lesbians, and they have this menage a trois thing, and they're just all a bunch of perverts." Yeah, you're the guy who should be writing Wonder Woman. Sure. Yeah, you get it. Yep.
What you've met her in 71. How did you meet her at that point in your career or your life?
My recollection is that it was at a party, and I can't tell you what city it was in because I was all over the country in 1971.
Mm-hmm.
Probably West Coast, but maybe not. And it was just an underground cartoonist sort of gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And I published an underground comic, and I was part of this group in Chicago with, Jay Lynch and Skip Williamson, and just, wonderful, wonderful people. And I was a big supporter of the underground comics movement, and I still am. And Trina had just pretty much popped out. She was her first stuff was coming out,
Mhm.
and I don't think she was the first woman in that field. Probably not by a long shot, because anybody could do an underground comic. But boy, she did it right, and she did it seriously. And then she went on to channel all that energy into the heritage of women cartoonists and characters.
Mhm.
And her research, her books, every one of them is brilliant. She wasn't the one who turned me on to Miss Fury. It was Wally Wood in a Mad magazine piece. But she was the first one that actually got me the material to read it. To read Miss Fury, and that was seriously cool. So was Wally Wood's version, but that's beside the point. Those were exciting times. They were tough. It was a Sisyphusian thing trying to make ends meet and publish underground comics. But American comics in particular were moribund at that time in 1971.
Mm-hmm.
They were just doing what they've always been doing. Some of it was great. Not as much of it as I would wish, but a lot of it. There's a lot of great stuff. But it was the same thing. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But let's do some new stuff too. And that's what the undergrounds were all about.
Mm-hmm.
There's no comics code. There's no rules. The only rule is if the printer, not the publisher, but if the printer can't print it, we may be in trouble.
Right.
But by can't print it, I mean won't print it.
Right.
But then in the midst of all that growth and all that experimentation and all that strangeness and, the sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Well, there was a lot of that in the underground movement as well.
Oh, yeah, everywhere. Mm-hmm. But it was absolutely, that's what the underground comics were about, partially because the real comic books, the Marvel and DC and, Harvey and Archie really weren't about them. They tried, but they didn't come close. Go-go checks. Mm-hmm. But within that group, there was Trina moving the barriers, mm-hmm. expanding the medium, expanding the expanding part of the medium, and then teaching us where she got it from. Oh, God. What a legacy. What a legacy.
She, as a cartoonist, she produced It Ain't Me, Babe Comics, which is the first ever all-woman comic book.
Yep.
She co-founded with the Women's Comics Collective, which produced Women's Comics, which is the longest lasting all-women comic anthology running from 1972 to 1992. There is a collected edition out there that's out of print, but if you find it, you should get it. You can probably get reprints from Dennis Kitchen. I'm sure you can. And she found other ways, as important as the work she did in the underground comics movement was important. She was not just an underground comics, and I don't mean that to diminish being an underground comics artist. Her skills transcended. She adapted novels to become graphic novels. Silverman.
Absolutely.
Her vastly underrated adaptation of her father's stories, originally printed in Yiddish and translated into English as a comic in comic form, that was released a few years ago. Fantastic. Just the fact of being the caretaker. And that's one of the things that's very so much about Trina, was that she was a caretaker of history. She called herself a historian, so don't get it twisted. She's a historian. But the need that she had to go and document and elevate and record the history of women's place in the comics medium and popular culture, and that part of it is something we will never be able to repay. That it's a gift that she's given to us all.
She gave us more than that.
Sure.
In this regard, because without Trina, I have a hard time imagining a world where people like Karen Berger and Karen Green and Mindy Newell and so many others could have thrived. Those door openers, those glass ceiling breakers are important. They're the most important people, the most important resources we have, because they're the gatekeepers who allow other people to have a chance. And Trina just that was her reason for being on this planet. And she fulfilled it massively. She had very strong politics. She did some stuff around the industrial workers of the world, which I thought was hilarious, because I was a member of the IWW back in 1969. And that was an old labor union, one of the first. And she reflected those old time sort of, 1930s style politics, but in a completely contemporary and useful manner. Making it useful is how you make it grow.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking as part of that large movement, making it useful to people who aren't already on your side is not an easy thing to do. And she did it exquisitely.
I agree. Mindy wants the Shiddikite book. I have a copy of it. I know I do. So maybe I'll loan it to you. I want to.
Does Mindy speak Yiddish?
I don't know.
She's never laid Yiddish on me.
If you're interested, go get this book. It is her autobiography. It's published 5 years ago or so. If you turn a page, you're going to learn something amazing. I did not know that when she was 16, she dated Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
And I opened the book just looking today, and there you go. That was in there. I've had this book for a while, and it's something I haven't gotten around to reading. But also, I recommend, if you're interested in what we're talking about in terms of the underground comics, this book here called Dirty Pictures.
It's we have a glow off of it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so by Brian Doherty, it's a nonfiction. Basically, let's see. The subtitle is "How Underground Network of Nerds, Feminists, Misfits, Geniuses, Bikers, Potheads, Printers, Intellectuals, and Art School Rebels Revolutionized Art and Invented Comics with an X."
Right.
It is a really good read. It's very. He's got a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff about Trina, and there's a lot of stuff about Trina's life. A lot of stuff about how she fit into that environment, and not all of it was as wonderful as we would have hoped.
It was an uphill struggle.
She did struggle, and it
was unique to its time. It's still with us, but not to the heavy-handed extent that it has been. So there's progress, and there's progress because there are women who stood up and said, "Hey, I'm here." And nobody did it more loudly or more effectively than Trina.
I agree. This is the book that I was mentioning. It is called Minyan Yidden, and You can get it on Amazon. I think I have a copy of it. It was 2017. Which it translates to A Bunch of Jews. And I have the description. So it is based on the 1938 short story collection by her father, and was originally published in Yiddish. There's a collection features a collection of stories from his life growing up in a shtetl in Belarus and immigrating to Brooklyn in the late 1910s. At the age of 16, he became a journalist and contributed short stories in Yiddish to the Jewish newspapers. And she has adapted them into English and made it into a graphic novel. And it's wonderful. She said about it, they are slyly humorous portraits of his little village in Belarus and life in Brooklyn after he came to America. It's a snapshot of the way that life would end with the coming of Nazis in World War II, although none of them knew it yet. So
I was lucky when I first came to New York. It was 68.
Mm-hmm.
The Lower East Side, which is where all the hippies hung out because the rent was cheap, that was where all of the old tenements were, not just for Jews, although that neighborhood was the Jewish neighborhood, but Italians and Asians, and those horrible buildings that were falling apart. If you look at them too hard, they'd get like 20 people inside one of those apartments.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you had to live because they couldn't even afford that low a rent. And they built a life. And that's the American way. That is the magic of America, because so many ethnicities have gone through that very self-same experience. I was fortunate enough to actually live a little bit in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
I knew people who were actors on the Yiddish stage. Not very well. Theodore Backel and I had a wonderful conversation because he couldn't believe I knew anything about it. And this is an actor, did a lot of Columbo and stuff, and a folk singer. Did an incredible version of George Harrison's Piggies. He meant it. And his roots were in the Yiddish theater, and that's something I can only appreciate from afar because I don't speak Yiddish, and I've never been inside one of those theaters for a performance. However, one of the biggest Yiddish theaters in Chicago, where I grew up, also became the studio for the National Barn Dance, which is what created what do you call it? The thing in Nashville,
Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, Grand Ole Opry. It was sort of a spinoff or a steal from the National Barn Dance, and I always thought that was funny. It's like if I ever met George Goebel or Pat Buttram, I would have asked them what was like to perform on that stage.
Well, I think what we're trying to say here is that the comics community and the world at large has lost a force for good, and a voice that made herself heard. And so,
those quarters,
Trina,
the women's quarters.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that program goes long enough so that they get to Trina. They did, in their second group, they did a hero of mine, a woman named Bessie Coleman, who was an aviatrix.
Didn't Trina write a book about her?
And Trina did a little sort of digest graphic novel about her. And for a long time, she was the only other person I knew who actually knew her story. And I knew it only because they named a street that ran through, doesn't any longer, through O'Hare Field in Chicago. They named it after Bessie Coleman.
Well,
The street that connected O'Hare Field to the military base. There used to be military base there. Was named Bessie Coleman Street or Boulevard or whatever. And I mean, it was an access road. But I'm driving through it because O'Hare still is a nightmare, always has been a nightmare. And I learned, before security, I learned the back roads. Ask Brian Bolland about that sometime. He almost lost his lunch because of my getting him to a flight on time. But
did you get him to the flight on time?
Yes.
Okay.
I drove up to the plane.
You would have gotten arrested now. I don't know if you did then.
I had to be tricky then, but I wouldn't have gotten arrested. If I'd made the wrong turn in any of a couple of places, I would have been in trouble. And with my background, I would have been in serious trouble, I think.
Yeah, probably.
But Trina knew who Bessie was.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, okay, if you have some quarters, check them out because Bessie might be on the back of one of them, or Maya Angelou, or so many other brilliant women. And I hope the program lasts long enough to get to Trina. Trina deserves to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks everybody for listening to us talk about this person, because she will be missed. I was just devastated by her, by the fact that she's gone. We weren't. It was not as shocking as it had been. There was some rumors that she had been sick and she had had a stroke, and that kind of was, we had heard a little bit here and there. So, but
well, if you die in your 60s, then everybody's going to say, "Wow, he died young."
Well, yes.
And if you die in your 70s, they'll say, "Well, 70, that's not bad. 75, that's not bad." 80s, it's like, well, yeah, what do you expect?
Well, no, because I'm cheated out of 15 years of Trina.
That's right. That's right. Well, we owe her work those 15 years. Let's do everything we can to keep her stuff in print. That's true. That's very good, Mindy. You're absolutely right. Theodore Bikel did play Worf's father.
Mindy is nothing but good.
Yeah, and he didn't play him as a Klingon. He played him as an Earthling. Anyway.
All right. While we're talking about celebrating life, by the way, if you want some more, Trina was featured on the Sunday Today show as the A Life Well Lived that Willie Geist does, which was good. I wish Willie read more comics. So he had better.
The first person I ever saw get that type of treatment on television, the first person in comics, was Jack Kirby.
Okay.
And when Jack died, ABC News did a feature on him, did an obit, but it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And my feeling was, well, Jack obviously deserves this, but the comics medium deserved it too. We got credit for doing for excellence, the entire medium. Thank you, Jack. And we've had many other people follow in terms of that public recognition. Sadly, now Trina. But, you look back at her career, you look back at what she's done for comics, for women, for humanity.
Listen,
you don't get better than that.
Yeah. How many other comic book professionals are in a Joni Mitchell song?
That's true. And I led with that in my column.
You did, and I knew exactly where it was going because that is one of my favorite pieces of Trina Robbins history trivia. That And Amanda Dybert, kind of posted that in her tribute, and it's one of the great things up there. If you're not familiar with the song "Ladies of the Canyon" by Joni Mitchell, the first verse is about Trina Robbins.
When that song was released, I was on the air.
Really?
Yeah, I am that old, and I knew it was about Trina, but I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Joni Mitchell did what? Trina, what? And today, in 2024, which is 53 years later, it's like, what? Trina? What?
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's wonderful. And also Joni's back, so what the hell, right?
Right, exactly. Anyway, let's talk about some news that came out today. The finalists for the Eisner Hall of Fame was announced. Did you see this?
I did see that.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. Because guess what? I'm an Eisner voter, weirdly. And
write me in.
Okay. If I can, I will. Here. So here's the list. Of people who are nominated but not in. There is a list of people who were selected by the judges to be automatically entered this year into the Hall of Fame, and it is quite a list. The automatic people who are going into the Hall of Fame without question, the people who are no longer with us, include Craig Flessel, A.B. Frost, Billy Graham, the artist, Albert Cantor, Warren Kramer, Oscar Lebeck, Franz Massaril, Kenji Nakazawa, Noel Sickles, Cliff Sterrett, Elmer Stoner, and George Tuska. The people who are living and are going in this year that are already automatically include Kim Deitch, Gary Groth, Don McGregor, Brian Talbot, Ron Turner, Lynn Varney, and James Warren.
Every one of them deserving, as are each and every one of those people on the screen right now.
Yep. I find it interesting that Don McGregor and Billy Graham are going in together.
Yes, that's interesting. You're right. That is interesting. I was focusing on your list, though, because there's two letterers on the list.
Well, two of the...
And oddly enough, two of the finest people ever to imitate our alphabet. It's just beautiful. I'm so glad just to see Ira and Abe there. That is so nice. And I'm also so proud of that Jill's up there.
Yep. It is quite a list. I can vote for 4 of them. I have to pick 4 out of this list.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. Because it's a list.
You can't go wrong, but you also can't go right.
Yeah, that's true. Because you can't pick 20 of them.
We owe each and every one of these people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that simple. We owe each and every one of these people.
Yep.
Some of whom are friends of mine. So
yeah, some of them are friends of mine. So
yeah. And you're younger.
Yeah. So that was big news today. I'm assuming that means that fairly soon we'll get the list of Eisner Award for the yearly stuff nominees that get announced at San Diego, which is a week later this year than usual due to calendar issues, I'm sure. Mindy has her votes, so just,
Mindy, I'm shocked. Jill is a remarkably gifted person.
I have
she's one of those people that I always seek out, no matter what condition I'm in at a convention, just to say hi.
Well, I made sure that happened the last convention we were at together.
That's true. That's true.
So hang on a second there. I think Mindy wrote one of my favorite Wonder Woman books that Jill drew. Am I right about that?
I'll let Mindy answer.
I think Mindy wrote that one. I can't find the cover. I can't find the cover right now. Oh well.
Tubes and wires, pal.
Tubes and wires. Well, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Okay. So Mindy says yes. Yes. There's it's the one about the two young girls and it's a beautiful book. Chalk.
Well,
yes.
that's why Mindy pisses me off.
Thank you for that, Mindy. By the way, I love that book very much.
Not only is Mindy one of them, and I've told her this, she knows this, one of the most underrated writers in the business, who made the terrible mistake of entering it before most women did. So she got shuffled a lot. But she's a brilliant writer, and I want to see more.
Of course.
And
that's 100%.
And she's so tired of my harping on her.
Maybe I'll try.
I feel good.
This is a big list, and it's an important part. One of the things that, and I'm not a fan, and someone said it recently, and I forget who it is. That these awards, why do we have to grade art or have winners and losers in these fake contests? Why do we award this as better than that when it's all art, right? And there's a very good point to that. There's a very good theory of leading that way. I'll counter that by saying that I think it's a good thing that we recognize people, that we recognize excellence, and that the concept of doing your best and making something that touches people or is extraordinary is recognized.
I absolutely agree with both sides of that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, excellence must be acknowledged because that's how we get more.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes from the same people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, take a look at the 1939 Oscar Award nominees for Best Picture of the Year. And tell me, I think it's 39, maybe 38, and tell me which of those movies should have lost. Because every one of them, in my book, should have won. And if any one of those movies had been released a year earlier, it would have won. So the competition part is ridiculous.
Sure, absolutely. There is the concept of this whole Hall of Fame thing is also another contentious question that we have to address. Is volume taken into consideration? Right? What if you just painted the Sistine Chapel and that's all you did? Is that Hall of Fame worthy? Or is it not?
Well, I'm a big John Cleese fan. Yeah, of course it's worthy, and of course it should be acknowledged.
Right.
But I don't think there's a competitive prize there.
Right. No, I'm not. Again, the competition aspect is I think what I'm taking exception to is that what I don't want, and I strive against competition. When I review comic books, there was a point where I kind of just I give it like 4 stars. I'm not going to get specifically pissed. But I went through processes through the evolution of Pop Culture Squad. If you look back at some of my older review columns where I would put stars on them and say, this is 4 stars, this is 3 stars. And if it was 2 star, I wasn't even going to review it because I didn't want to say anything bad. It's either great.
Right. There's plenty of good stuff to turn people on to.
Yeah, that's my goal. And so that's what I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not good. There are things that I don't like. Rare, but there are things I don't like, and there are things that I wouldn't recommend. And I'm not going to talk about those things. For the most part. I've never on this show said about something that I don't like. I've said that there are things I don't like, but I have never named it. And there's a reason for that.
See, I'm willing to talk about Kanigher anytime.
He's a good writer.
As long as they still made purple typewriter ribbons.
What does that mean?
His purple prose. He had to have a purple typewriter ribbon in order to use all that purple prose. And a lot of what you read about under Bob's byline was rewritten of his later stuff, last 10, 15 years, was rewritten by his editors, particularly Joe Kubert, who was his friend and benefactor and covered his ass like nobody's business.
Yeah. Well, that I did know. But again, one of the things that's important though is that these types of things, I don't want people, and I encourage people to not make comics for the awards. I know a lot of people who I've had these conversations recently where people are like, oh, I did this thing. I submitted it to the Eisners. And someone's like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing that you did submit it. And you do. Publishers submit things that they want, just like TV, publishing houses submit things to Emmys, and movies submit things to the Oscars that they want to be reviewed and considered
for your consideration.
Yes. Make comics because you love comics. Make comics because you have something to say. Make comics because you want to produce and you want your work to be seen. Don't make comics for an award that in the long grand scheme of things a lot of times becomes a popularity contest. And
yeah.
And that's the shame of it, right?
Yes. I received an award in Baltimore 12 years ago. I'm going to reach for it right here because it's right here. Now, you see that?
I see it.
Now that is...
I didn't know Dick's signature is on it. I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, that's so not just the signature.
Ah, that's awesome.
So my boss can watch me work now, which is scary. But this is for let me read it here. It's for outstanding effort in changing comics one day at a time, and that's the award I am most proud of. This, if there was one award that I'd ever wanted, that's the one.
Changing comics one day at a time, breaking the
Well,
barriers.
yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Well, we're gonna get to that. That's coming up next, folks. So,
and there's a bunch of stories about that.
So,
some having to do with your friends over at Apple.
Yeah, they're not my friends. I don't have an iPhone. I don't own anything Apple.
I know.
Your friends. So, let's
Not anymore.
let's change subject. So we are still talking comics. We are still talking, but I had a great weekend this past weekend. My wife and I went down to Texas, which I had never been to, other than to change planes in airports. So it was beautiful. It's a beautiful state. It's a lot greener than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be like all desert, just dust bowls, but it is green. And
There's plenty of that around.
yeah, well, we were in Central Texas. We had a friend's wedding to attend in Troy, which is halfway between Waco and Austin. And anyway, we went to see a friend on Sunday and ended up at a show called Staples, which is an indie art and comic expo inside of a college room, similar to Ithacon. I think Ithacon's a little bigger, and definitely better. Shh, don't tell anybody, but it's definitely better.
It's better than Ithacon?
No, Ithacon is better than Staples. We're not giving awards, but like the show that we went to this weekend was a great little show.
I understand, but why make an enemy out of Ed?
I'm not. I'm saying Ithacon's way better.
Yeah.
That's of course.
Yeah.
Which is where we will be, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. You will find Bob and Mike at Ithacon. We will be doing panels. We will have our table. We will have some things you can purchase even. We'll have some fun stuff and it'll be a great time. So definitely, if you're anywhere in the New York, Pennsylvania, Southern Canada part, come see all of us.
Well, New England, New
Jersey, everywhere. Anywhere you can drive 10 hours to get to Ithaca, feel free to do so.
And you have to drive 10 hours from anywhere to get to Ithaca.
Well, it's 6 for us. Cherry's going to be there too, of course.
Yay!
But at this little show, there was one guy who had, I guess he's trying to, unload his old collection. He had a couple of 4 boxes that were there. And I can't believe that I did not have the first issue of Shatter, which, for people who don't know, was published by First Comics in 1985.
Oh, and before then.
This issue is 1985. This is actually it was 84 that I think everything was done, and this actually came out in 85 because it's got a trademark date of 85.
Mm-hmm.
June of 85 published, and this really nice intro piece, which you can't see because of the glare, but written by a gentleman named Mike Gold, something like that. You guys were in Evanston at the time. I thought you guys had moved to Chicago by then. Maybe it wasn't.
No, Chicago and Evanston are twin cities. They're both cities and they share a border. So
but I thought the offices were actually moved into Chicago by that point.
They were. It was the following year. It was like January of 86.
Okay.
I know because I didn't move with them. I moved to New York.
Right. Okay. So tell people about this. What is it? What is, like, I mean, it's crazy. It's so good. Everyone, if you don't know, I mean, it's very simple. Everything. Shatter is the first digitally created comic book, right?
Yeah. The very first.
And it ran in the backstories of Sable for a while too.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have one of those too. Well, see?
Yeah, there you go.
Featuring Shatter plus Shatter. This is and ironically, I have like 1 to 29, but I did not have 30, which is this one. So I picked that up this week as well.
Oh, there you go.
So what was the concept of this, and what was it like to put this project into motion?
Mike Sains,
Mm-hmm.
who's the artist.
Mhm.
I mean this in the nicest possible way. I mean this as a major compliment. Mike is totally bug fuck.
Okay.
So he saw the original Macintosh computer, 128K memory, single-sided disk drive, like 400K storage in those clamshell floppies. And he looked at this thing. He was an airbrush artist, did a lot of work for Epic Illustrated, for example. Beautiful work. And a good storyteller.
Mhm.
And he looked at that Macintosh and said, that is a pencil. And he did a couple of pages just of layout, of design, of some storytelling. I mean, not much of a story, but just a proof of concept. And he shows this to me. And I look at it and I go, did I say anything that wasn't obscene? Because phrases like holy fucking shit come to mind. I couldn't believe it. I mean, 72 dots per inch. And you can see each one. You can draw little numbers next to them if you feel like connecting the dots. And I said, let's do this. I remember taking those pages and sending them to a couple of the members of our board of directors, because this was going to be a big deal. And I said, we could do this. And they said, can you really tell a story? And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely, in the hands of the right people. And Mike and Peter Gillis, who's brought into dialogue, also has a very strong computer background, so he can get into the mechanics of it, are the right people. So they greenlit it. Not that they ever turned me down until the very end, but they greenlit it, and we worked on it. We worked on it really hard for a long time to get that down. Mike was, and probably still is, very dedicated to his work. So he wanted to make sure that every dot was in the right place and that we were doing something that nobody had done before. So we produced this thing and we publicize it. And I don't think I'd ever worked on a book that got anywhere near as much publicity as that, except for maybe Superman Muhammad Ali, which was on the front page of every newspaper in America. And our print run was astonishing. It was by far our highest print run. And we outsold, I think, all of DC's books and most of Marvel's that one month. And we got an enormous amount of attention everywhere but Apple. Because at that moment in time, Apple was trying to sell their machine as a business machine. And they couldn't do it. I mean, not with this comic book, because comic books are comic books, So they didn't want to acknowledge it. However, I got a call and I got a letter and I got a signed copy of his book from Jean-Louis Gasset, who is a major guy in computing, still is actually, but was kind of running Apple's operations day to day at that time. And they loved it. We were an underground hit in Cupertino, but nobody would know that from the way Apple did not stand behind the book. They could have sold a lot more computers. However, we did sell a lot of computers into the comics industry. Yeah. Within 2 years, there were computers on everybody's desk. There would have been anyway, maybe, but they were Macintosh computers because of the graphics capabilities. Mm-hmm. And the graphics capabilities, which have now extended throughout computerdom, have gotten unfathomably brilliant to the point where AI is a very genuine concern for the comics business. Very genuine concern, because everybody's got the computers and people are used to light boxing and photocopying and that sort of thing. So AI is just the next step. So I'm concerned about that. But we added computer coloring when we could. We added computer fonts. When the laser printer came out, this was before the laser printer. When the laser printer came out, we converted to that. Now we're dealing with like 300 DPI. And that was great. It was restrictive in that the medium was so new. But it was critical because it was a new medium. And it did help get comics into that part of the 20th century. And I'm really proud of it. And every once in a while, somebody will come up, or some reporter or something, and talk about those days.
Or some podcaster.
Well, but yeah, right. But I can't help but think, like, this was so long ago in computer time.
Oh,
2 years is a lifetime in computers, and this was 1984. So we were breaking ground.
So the fact that you were doing this, and I'll give you my experience in that. So 1984, it was a. Let me see. Let me consult the tome. Let's see. Something about Mac. Oh yeah. So apparently, Peter would do the dialogue and Mike's art on an Apple III. I'm sorry, and it would be lettered on the Mac. This is insane. I was using
I'm used to that word.
I was using an Apple IIe, I think, in school. We were learning how, like, I was learning BASIC. I think BASIC was a language at that point. And in like 85, or no, maybe it was 84. It was 84. We had a TI in class. The school owned a Texas Instruments computer. And I tell my kids this stories because it's like, people talking about how you had to wind up the front of a car to get it to start, like that kind of thing. Because this computer did not have a hard drive. It only had RAM. So whatever you did was good. And Ed woke up. It wasn't yesterday. So whatever you did was whatever you did in that session. And when you turned it off, it was gone. So you had to like write it out on paper and then type in what you were going to do. And we had to make a design using a program called Logo, which was this like a turtle cursor. And this was about 84. And the funny part is that this is the funniest story about that and how this relates for me, is that my partner in that project that we had to do was my best friend at the time. And we made a dragon. We had the little cursor draw a line, go up here, turn left, blah, 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 and leave your thing behind it. And it ends up making a dragon. So we were comic book friends. Like, we both loved comic books, and I was going to write comic books and he was going to draw comic books. And now he is a tattoo artist, owns his own shop. And I talk about comic books, but he also makes books about how to draw dragons on people.
I know so many comics. No, let me rephrase that. I know so many tattoo artists who are comics fans, who are hardcore, well-educated comics fans, which I think is funny because you can't really do storytelling
Yeah, well, you can, you can, you
Yeah.
can. There. Well, the best part about it is his shop. The bathroom at his shop is full of comic books. Like the Green Lantern with the tattooed man comic is in there. The cover,
Really?
the Gil Kane
Cool.
cover. Yep.
Yeah.
And old like sailor pirate stuff with tattooed people on them. That's great stuff. But anyway, the point is that what you guys were doing and revolutionizing that the concept of making something in this fashion, like it must have freaked out everybody in any production room at any comic book publisher.
Oh yeah, that was the best part.
Well, Jack Adler was gone by then, right? So
No, actually, Jack and I had a conversation about that.
oh, I'd love to hear. What was that?
He didn't understand it, but he really wanted to know.
Oh, cool.
And Jack was getting along in years and had a few difficulties. So there was only so much I could explain. But I had these long telephone conversations with him about that because he was so curious. Let me tell you something. The first person I knew to use a computer in a comics-related capacity was our mutual friend, Jack C. Harris.
That does not surprise me.
Because Jack created a program with his little, it was like a abacus, but healthier.
Mm-hmm.
He created a program so that he can index his Batman comics collection.
I just pay for that now.
Yeah, of course. But in 1978, that was it.
Oh, yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, a couple of years later.
I'm not going to say that I haven't written a database to index my comics, because I have. One of the first thing I ever learned in as an adult was how to write SQL. So I did create a relational database for my comics.
Of course, it's a natural progress.
Sure.
There was a British editor. I mean, he's still around, but he's not editing comics anymore because he's my age. Named Richard Burton, an old friend. He was a fanzine editor. He was an editor at Marvel Comics UK and at 2000 AD. He was the model for the Burt bot in Judge Dredd.
Mm-hmm.
He bought one of those first Sinclair computers. Do you remember the Sinclair?
Mm-hmm.
Sinclair was like 1K. And you needed to put a cassette in order to store everything, also to run anything.
Right.
And I said, well, what are you going to do with this? I'm saying I wasn't skeptical because I'm really into new technology because, bright and shiny.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I don't know. I'm going to write a database. So I told him about Jack. He said, oh, you're too late. And then within a couple more years, we had Shatter.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's amazing to look at this book today, almost 40 years later.
Oh.
And yeah, you're working on it 40 years ago right now.
I know.
And
you were there last year for the 40th anniversary panels that we did at conventions.
Right. So this was that you working on it in 84. It's 2024. It's 40 years ago. And this, for its time, it's hard to convey to people who weren't alive then how revolutionary and amazingly advanced for what was going on that this came out as. Like there wasn't things being made with computers.
No.
There was no digital anything, and the detail in 72 DPI is amazing.
Yeah you'd think that Mike was like a speed freak or something. Just
But
know-
even
get all
just
that done.
even just to know the tools that were available, like you can, like if you wanted
Right.
to do this, if someone who knows how to use Photoshop could do this in a day, this had to take, a week a page. Like that's what I would think. And I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure, and that's what.
Well, he might
most
have.
of-
He might have. I'm not sure
Yeah.
he ever slept. But it was a great moment for First Comics because we already had this reputation of doing stuff that wasn't being done in comics.
Yep.
Mike Grell is doing James Bond stuff. That's high fantasy. Howard Chaykin is doing American Flag. He's what? Across the board, Nexus, everything. And Shatter fitting into that program was just the next step. It's like, okay, here's something else you've never seen before. Let's see what we can do with this. And what happened was that computers became a tool very, very fast.
Right. Like the fact,
Very, very fast.
I mean, it is, and it's something that I feel like I feel we missed out when we were talking about the things about First Comics, and I don't think you can tell the story of First Comics accurately without spending a decent amount of time talking about Shatter and how revolutionary it was to the industry beyond the storytelling. Not that there's anything wrong with the storytelling. I don't mean to diminish that, but the revolutionary aspect of it and how it changed the game. Also, you did says with thanks to Apple Macintosh on the this is a nice nod to the folks in Cupertino.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately perhaps, I knew about, corporate bureaucracy, which I don't like and hate more than anything else in the world, with the exception of a former president. But it was a moment in time.
Sure.
And we seized that moment. And that's all on Mike. He started it, Mike Sainz.
Well,
and all on Peter because he helped control, sanity, getting it out. And Rick Oliver, who was assistant editor and ultimately became editor, and it was a team effort. But it all started with Mike Sainz looking at this $1,500 computer and going, "That's a brush."
That's the genius. That is the genius of an artist. That is, I have the most and utmost respect for, whether it's a writer or whether it's a physical artist or digital artist or a colorist or even a letter. Anybody who has the ability to look at a blank canvas or sheet of paper or something and see something that's not there. It's funny because you talk to certain people and certain people have this ability that they already see it and they're just exposing it, right? I think Walter works that way. I think that from talking to him, he sees what's on the page before it's there and exposes it.
I'll tell you a story about that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm looking at my wall in my office, and there's this beautiful Dr. Fate drawing by Mr. Simonson, and there's Onks all over it. It's obviously it's Dr. Fate, but it's also a critical part of the design. And the Onks all had to be sort of exactly the same. It's not like you're going to stat 400 Onks and play them. Walter took an eraser and carved the Onks out of that eraser and then rubber stamped it. Now that's genius, folks.
Mm-hmm.
That's genius. And we all hear stories about things like that. And, we've all done little things like that, although nothing like that. But as writers, we stare at that blank piece of paper. Now it's a blank screen, but it's still blank.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We have to fill it with our wisdom and wit, generally in that order. So if you can't innovate while you're doing it, you're just hacking it out. Be in touch with those innovative pulses within you. They're critical. We all have them, but we have to nurture them. We have to feed them. We have to get acceptance for them in order to go on. And then take whatever criticism you get seriously and take whatever praise you get equally seriously, because that's what makes you better. That gives you the motivation to move forward. And of course, the computer revolutionized all of that, as well as everything else in our lives, including our cars. And only now is it getting like a science fiction movie. I'm a little worried.
Well, yeah. I still want Apple CarPlay in my car or Android Auto. I want whatever car I get next has to have that.
Really? Yeah, me too. I agree. It's when I was 17, the only straight job I had my entire life, other than like babysitting, I was a partsman at the J.C. Whitney. I'm sorry?
Babysitting is not a straight job.
It's true. But I was 12.
Okay.
When I was 17, I was a partsman for the summer at the J.C. Whitney auto parts catalog. People they had to store, Warshawski and Company. And I spent 10 weeks as a partsman. Hardest labor I ever did in my life. And I knew I didn't like, labor to begin with. I mean, the whole concept was appalling to me. But you got to do it because you're 17, and they make you do stupid shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I did, and that's where I learned persistence against bureaucracy. And that's where it was a huge operation. And that's where I learned how to stand up to, or started to stand up to bureaucracy. I was already something of a political activist by that point. I already had about 2 years under my belt. And I was already writing professionally for a local newspaper. But dealing with bureaucracy is a skill that is a very political skill because the bureaucrats hate it. Made a whole career out of being the outside of the box guy, and the first thing you learn when you're the outside of the box guy is that when they grab you when they need you and they have no idea what to do, so let's think out of the box. So they hire me. And then eventually I have created a new box for them. Oh, we got a new box. That's great. We don't have to put up with you anymore. I know that. I know that. I'm amazed I lasted as long as I did in some places because, I was a kid and like I am now, and I didn't deal with bureaucracy well. It's anti-creative.
Okay.
Anti-creative. So I was able to cope with Apple and promote around Apple. We did a good job of that. Persistence against bureaucracy. Who said that?
I don't know. Some guy.
Oh, okay. Some guy. That's okay.
No, you did. That's just a better. That's your quote.
No, that's it. I mean, that's the truth.
It might be the subtitle to the book.
It is, yes, as an art form, but do it as an art form. Try to be as creative as you can, not because it'll make you more successful at doing whatever it is you're trying to do. It'll just make it a better experience for yourself.
Yeah.
Because fighting bureaucracy is a bloody job.
Well,
If Paul Levitz is listening to this right now, he's laughing his ass off.
Well, all right.
Dr. Levitz.
Dr. Levitz. Congratulations to Paul.
That's right.
I think we've exhausted ourselves tonight. I appreciate everybody being here and listening and watching, letting us share our stories of Trina and the rest of it. We will be back next week. We will be back with Mike Martz. If you have left, you've missed the fact that Mike Martz is going to be here next week. I'm super excited about it. We're going to talk about his career, which is like, I don't know if there's much at Marvel and or DC that he did not work on in the last 30 years. And he's probably not going to like hearing 30 years, but
hey, I dealt with it. It was 40.
I understand. And we're going to talk a lot about Mad Cave and what they're doing, because, you know, that's really good stuff. In the meantime, keep checking out popculturesquad.com. Keep checking out, there'll be a new article from Ed Cato, our good friend, in the next day or so. With further ado.
And then he has to concentrate on Ithacon.
Well, because Ithacon's coming. And it's going to be, it's going to be a good one. Walter and Wheezy are going to be there. Yeah. There's just a tremendous.
Dean Haspiel,
Dino's going to be there.
Dino's going to be there.
So much fun.
I'm going to crash this panel, and
I might host it. So you know,
well,
I'm in the bullpen on that one because Ed is supposed to host it, and I've been told to warm up.
Okay.
So.
Well, listen, folks, if you're anywhere near Ithaca, it's a wonderful show. It truly is. It's a 2-day show. It's about comic books, which is rare these days. Stop by. Bob and I will have a table, probably right behind Roger Stern, which is where we were last year, which is great. Don Simpson's going to be there. So and plenty of other folks. So please drop by, say hello.
If you're thinking about
going to you money, maybe not, but otherwise drop by.
If you're thinking about going to C2E2 in Chicago next weekend, don't just go to Ithacon instead.
Right. That's right. I, Mr. Chicago boy, will be at Ithacon, not C2E2.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with anything about Chicago.
And everything to do with Reed. All right. All right, folks. We will see you later. Mike, it's been wonderful. We'll talk soon.
Bob, it's great.
All right.
Thank you, folks, for being out there.
All right. We'll see you later.
See you later.
This has been a production on the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?